people. It did this year, in 2013, out of 207 million cases. So last year, I didn't write that well, so I apologize. Last year, there were 207 million cases, and out of those 207 million cases, 627,000 people died. Most of those people were children. So just to give you, a food for thought there. And in Africa. Okay, but malaria is in Africa, Asia, places where there's just a lot of mosquitoes in tropical climates. Approximately 1,500 to 2,000 cases occur with U.S. citizens traveling abroad. Malaria is so common that when you travel abroad and go to these tropical countries, which again, this is another interesting fact, is if you plan on traveling to a tropical country, you should visit your doctor 1 to 2 months in advance and let them know where you're going, because more than likely you will need certain vaccinations that will help in order for you to go. So, for instance, I have a vaccination for Salmonella typhi because, when you go to Vietnam, there's foodborne illnesses and things like that that you normally wouldn't be vaccinated from here. So just interesting food for thought. And they gave me anti-malarial drugs to take while I was there because, in case you get bitten by a mosquito carrying malaria, you've already got this drug in your bloodstream, and so it kills off the organism before it has a chance to infect. So the life cycle is interesting, and I'll tell you why. A person gets bitten by a mosquito, an infected mosquito, and the protozoan then enters the bloodstream. It goes into your blood. You won't feel the symptoms until about 7 to 10 days after. Okay, and that includes fever, headache, chills, vomiting, and then you have the potential of dying within 24 hours after that. The protozoan enters your bloodstream, and I actually, I was supposed to have a picture of this, and I didn't, so I apologize. But imagine these little tiny little things crawling into your bloodstream until it gets to your liver. Then it burrows into your liver cell, where it grows and multiplies. Now, unlike viruses, okay, these guys kind of are, they eat you from within. So they go into a liver cell, and they divide and multiply by eating your liver cell. That's like a big buffet. And they multiply that way, and then they burst. Now, when they burst, so they're in your liver, they burst out from your liver, they go into the bloodstream, and when they do that, they start infecting your blood cells. But what's really freakish about your blood cells is they hide in your blood cells so your immune system doesn't find them. This is the reason why they're so deadly. What's interesting is that there are several treatments for malaria. If you only take one treatment, people can get relapses of it because they're hiding, they go dormant sometimes. They hide in your cells, and then all of a sudden, boom, they burst and they come out and they make you very sick. You can actually have relapses of this unless you are completely treated for malaria. Are there any questions? And thank you for all these facts and the discussion. This is great. It makes the talk so much better. Questions at all that I can answer for you? No? All right, treatment and prevention. Anti-malarial drugs, like I said before, you take this as a preventative. If you're going into a malaria-infested country, it's probably a good idea because you don't want to get malaria. There's usually two drugs that you take after infection. One to target the blood and one to actually target the liver and to target those dormant cells because it hides. One of the biggest things that you do is vector control, so spraying for mosquitoes. In Africa, they spray for mosquitoes and they spray in the house, and they still actually use DDT. And the reason why is because DDT has lasting effects for over a year. In some cases, when it comes to, life or death, it's kind of important to take down the mosquito population that way. So, going on to some common pathogenic protozoans that you may or may not have heard. I'm going to list them. Cryptosporidium, Amoebic dysentery and Giardia are probably actually really unusually common in the United States, and you may not have known it. Like, you may have had an awful case of really watery diarrhea and not known that it was actually a protozoan, and it was, you know what I mean? It was actually a protozoan instead of a bacterial infection. They are usually fecal-oral transmission. Cryptosporidia you can usually get like in swimming pools, which is why it's important not to swallow the water. Daycares where they don't clean, they don't bleach properly and do all those other things. Cryptosporidia usually clears itself. From what I've read, a lot of people actually get Cryptosporidia and they just don't know about it. They have diarrhea for a couple days and then it's done. They move on. Amoebic dysentery and Giardia. You actually will need medication in order to clear it. Amoebic dysentery is by this protozoan, Anti-Amoeba. It usually affects your intestines, but if it gets really bad, it can actually burrow into your lungs and into your brain, where you die. Another protozoan that you might have heard of with amoeba is, contact lens wearers. There's actually a couple stories if you Google them, where if you don't properly wash your contact lenses, or if you keep them in your eyes for too long, than one day, you are more susceptible to amoebic infections that can actually make you blind. So it's good to wash your contacts. Giardia is waterborne, and you can get this by like drinking water out of a stream. For instance, like campers tend to get Giardia a lot, and your dogs tend to get Giardia a lot when they go to dog parks and things like that. So, bottom line in terms of prevention of this is you want to filter or boil your water. Don't drink the pool water. And of course, like I said before, wash your hands frequently. I wanted to bring up a common STD, again, that people may not have realized, which is called trichomoniasis. It's a common STD. Men usually are asymptomatic carriers, but in women, they can either be asymptomatic or it causes cramping and lovely greenish discharge and painful urination. Sometimes women will come in and they're complaining it's a UTI. They pee in a cup. You look at it under the microscope and lo and behold, they're swimming and looking at you and smiling because they actually have this protozoal infection instead of a bacterial infection. It can be easily treated, but if women don't treat it, then, if they become pregnant, they can actually have a higher risk of developing premature underweight babies. So there's that. Anything else that I can answer for you before I talk about Toxoplasma? Because that's a fun one. Questions at all? No? All right, I'm going to go on. All right, so Toxoplasma Gondii. You may have heard of this, and actually Stephen brought this to my attention. He's like, you should talk about this. It's interesting because people claim that it's because of this protozoan that you've got, you hear about the story of the crazy cat woman, hoarders. I couldn't find information to confirm it, like scientific information at all. But, there is this rumor that when you are infected with Toxoplasma Gondii, it induces you to hoard all these cats, which actually makes sense because you get Toxoplasma Gondii cleaning cat poop. This is, the litter box thing. So it is zoonotic, which means it is passed on from animal to human, but usually it is passed on from animal to human through fecal matter, like cat poop. You can also get it by ingestion of meat, undercooked pork, or ingesting contaminated soil or water. What's interesting, and again, I found this was fascinating, is it infects CDC says it infects about more than 60 million people in the United States, so it is far more common than we know. However, most people that are infected with it actually have no symptoms. So if you have a cat, you just, keep that in mind, because it tends to be passed through cat poop. Most people have no symptoms, unless they are, like I said before, immunocompromised, pregnant, elderly, or, AIDS. The symptoms, if you have them, fevers, muscle aches, swollen lymph nodes, and this tends to be persistent, so it can last for months if you haven't been treated for it. It can cause damage to the brain, vision problems, and eye redness. And infants, it is passed from mother to child too. So if a woman is pregnant and she has toxoplasma, she can actually pass it to her baby. Usually infants are asymptomatic, but they can be born with brain or eye damage at birth. Now, the interesting thing is you should see that source that I put there, number 26. They have linked Toxoplasma Gondii infections to changes in behavior, like what Clint was saying. There are actually microorganisms out there that will change your behavior. Toxoplasma tends to be one of them. There was actually a study several years back where they infected mice with toxoplasma, and it made mice want to go to the cat to be eaten because, cats actually spread it. People that are infected, there is a correlation between Toxoplasma Gondii and suicide. Women have a 54% higher chance of wanting to commit suicide. It's also been associated with schizophrenia and slower reflexes. They said people that are infected with Toxoplasma Gondii have a higher chance of causing car accidents because their reflex time is actually slower. So in terms of whether or not it increases your want to hoard cats, that's not, it hasn't been correlated yet that I could find, but, there you go. Are there any questions that I could answer for anybody? So Gandalf, you're saying, does it cause you to want more cats? It's been speculated, but not proven. Not scientifically proven. Let's see, Vadi asks, can a human with this infect another human? Would that be if she or he cooked for me without washing her hands? I do not think so. In fact, I would say no. And the reason why, I didn't go into it in detail here, but the poop has to sit for a while in your litter box before it develops into something infective. So, in fact, one of the things that they say to prevent toxoplasma is to change your cat litter box every day. If it sits for a couple days, it actually increases the chance of infection. So, yeah. Dogs eat poop. I know. I don't know if dogs get toxoplasma, Rune. I'm not sure if it does. Any other questions that I could answer for you? Aw, I wouldn't put your cat up for adoption. Just, change the cat poop with gloves and wash your hands. Okay, so I'm reading what Thick Brick wrote here. Wikipedia says numerous slides have shown living in a household with a cat is not a significant factor for T. gondii infections, though living with several kittens has some significance. So there you go. And then you can see the numbers there. So if you go to the wiki, there's probably some sources there for you. I couldn't find any, I would say reliable sources. I found some magazines that said it, but I couldn't find any reliable sources that linked it. But I thought it was just, an interesting, an interesting thing to bring up. Okay, I'm going to go on to fungal diseases. Fungus is also a eukaryote, by the way, which is part of the reason why when you have ringworm or athlete's foot or yeast infections, it almost takes over a month to clear it, at least. These are they can be very problematic. And again, eukaryotic pathogens are just nothing to laugh at, and funguses are one of those. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about toxic mold, only because it's in the media a lot, and to be honest with you, I didn't know much about it. I actually don't know very much about fungal diseases because my thing was, more bacteria and viruses. But toxic mold, Stachybotrys chartarum, I think is the second word. I just know it by Stachybotrys because it's a fun word to say. I looked at the CDC site, and I looked at some other pieces, and what is interesting is it seems like this toxic mold doesn't cause any more issues than any other mold problems. Meaning, if you have extreme mold allergies or you are exposed to a lot of mold spores, it can cause respiratory problems, asthma, and infections and other things. But they tend to be more prevalent and linked to upper respiratory tract diseases in, again, immunocompromised people, or if they're in very large amounts. Now, people are like, well, then how do I prevent this and stuff like that? First thing is that if you have a mold problem in general, you really should get rid of it because you have a lot of mold in your house, and your body will actually have a very strong allergic reaction to it anyways. So it doesn't necessarily have to be this species that does it. It could be any common species that is in the house. I thought that was really interesting. So I actually dragged up some stuff. Actually, no, I thought I had another slide about that, but maybe I didn't. Oh yeah, I took it out. Okay, so oh, I know what I did. It's out of order. Okay, so let me go here. So let me talk about treatment and prevention for these things. Like athlete's foot and all of that stuff. Treatment and prevention for mold. You want to clean it, but you want to wear a mask. And you can buy like a cheap mask at Lowe's or Home Depot or something. There's special cleaners for it, but it works just as well, and I would actually argue better if you just mixed a cup of bleach with 1 gallon of water. What you don't want to do, though, is mix that with another cleaner, especially ammonia, because then you create a poison gas that can kill you. So just bleach with water will do the trick. You want to dry the areas out, and then, get rid of the mold problem. Either change the plumbing or whatever you need to do, add a humidifier if it's in the basement, so on and so forth. You don't get mold unless there's a lot of water there and it's very dark. So, to keep that in mind is the best defense against fungal diseases and fungus in general is dry it out. Now, for fungal diseases of the body, treatment is usually antifungal creams, there's sprays, and there's also medications that you take orally. If you have what's called oral thrush, which is a yeast that is in your mouth, they actually have antifungal washes, mouth washes, that you have to actually swish quite often for very long times before you actually get rid of it. Now, athlete's foot is actually spread by pretty much walking barefoot in public areas where people with athlete's foot are. They spread the spores around, like in places like locker rooms and showers. So where there's lots of moisture on the ground, you can get athlete's foot. When I go to a hotel, I actually wear flip-flops everywhere because I'm paranoid. So something to keep in mind. Another thing is you don't want to exchange nail clippers because you can get nail fungus. Also, when you go for your pretty manicures and pedicures, check for a license, but also, and I didn't know this until I did the research today, or 2 days ago, that their instruments are sterilized. So if they're just picking it off the table and you don't see that, there's a cleaning procedure or something like that, then just walk out, because you don't want a nail infection. Believe me, they can last for a very, very long time. They're very problematic. And then again, stay dry. Change your socks every day, and people would also say change your shoes every day too, to kind of prevent that moisture from building up. Any questions before I go on to vaccines? You know, Thick Brick, I have bleach in bulk. I will tell you that. I buy 3 bottles at a time. And a lot of it, I go through a lot of it. Questions? Does cold weather help kill the bad stuff? I don't think so. I know that heat can help because viruses don't really like heat. You know, and there's a whole thing about temperatures and stuff like that, but I don't think cold does anything. And incidentally, you know how people say put your jacket on, you'll catch a cold? That actually isn't the case. You do need a pathogen in order to do that. So, you know, it's better to just say, wash your hands. I would rather wash your hands instead of, you know, wear a jacket. But wash your hands. and cover your mouth when you sneeze, but not with your hand, but with the crook of your elbow or with your forearm. So let's see. In toenail infection, does the infection last until you take antifungus? Yes, that is my understanding anyways, Potato Fry, is that you actually need to take an antifungal going to the doctor. Because the other thing, too, about fungal infections is they can spread, right? And I would rather get rid of 1 fungal toe than have 10. Steven says here, sometimes cold weather can make it worse, depending. That's true. If you have a cold water going through a warm house, you can get condensation and more mold growth. Yes, very true. Yeah, other questions? I know that there's discussion in here too, so I'm going to just stick to questions right now if people have that. And I'm almost done, by the way, because I know there's a lot of information that I gave you. Okay, Potato Fry says, and does it change the shape of the nail until it grows out? Yes, until it grows out with antifungal. Yes, it does. And in fact, in extreme fungal nail cases, the doctor will remove the nail and let it grow back because it can be a huge issue. So yes, they remove the whole nail. Can I go on? Or do people have other questions? Okay. All right. Let's talk about vaccines. Because people asked about that. Like Roddy said before, or asked me before, and I answered, vaccines are actually made out of usually parts of the pathogen itself. One of the reasons why sometimes you get a fever from a vaccine is because the cell walls cause fever. They just cause this really, really strong immune reaction to the vaccine. That's not a bad thing. And in fact, there is an argument, and in fact, my husband would say this. Incidentally, my husband is a pediatric immunologist. I studied pathogens, he studied the immunology. It was a good mix. And what he actually said when he saw me doing this talk is that a lot of pediatricians tell you to take Advil or Tylenol before you get vaccinated to take down the fever. And that's actually a bad thing. Because if you suppress the immune reaction from a vaccine, you won't get a strong reaction. So there's that. So I just thought I'd send that out there so that you can think about it. Now, like we said before, vaccines prime the immune reaction so that if the body encounters a certain pathogen, you can almost get an immediate reaction to protect you when you actually encounter it. So it's like training the body to say, hey, you know what? If this comes here, if this comes into your body, then you really should, do something about it, like right away. Don't wait. Because if it's a foreign antigen that comes into your body, it takes a while before your body even knows, that something's going to happen. It is because, and I want to bring this up, remember smallpox? Terrible, terrible smallpox? Vaccines is what eradicated it. Polio. Vaccines is what caused it to go away. So vaccines are very good. They're very good for you. They do not cause the sickness itself. It may cause some of the symptoms of it, but believe me, you would rather have the symptoms from a vaccine than actually have the disease itself. So they virtually eliminated a lot of the devastating effects of diseases in the United States. Some facts, though. There is a controversy sometimes. They say 1 in 68 children born in 2002 have autism. It is on the rise. It is correlated with vaccination. There is a positive correlation with vaccination. But whether or not vaccination causes it is something different, and that has not been proved yet. But I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a second, because this is a really good point of discussion. The IOM report on adverse effects of vaccines, and you can kind of see I think 23 is the reference to that. The findings indicate that these vaccines are relatively safe and that serious adverse events are quite rare. They're rare, so you have to kind of weigh the numbers in some ways. When you take a vaccine, there is always a risk that you're going to have some sort of reaction no matter what. So I'm going to just say that. Is the risk more, more than catching, say, smallpox? No. We do have nowadays kids that are coming back with measles because parents are not vaccinating them. Whooping cough, which used to be eliminated, is now back because parents have refused vaccination. Do we want these childhood do we want these childhood diseases back? Probably not. Again, though, keep in mind, and there's this huge controversy about Thermacell and things like that, and I understand that. There is no link to Thermacell and autism. However, the nature of how vaccines are created, and this is just insider information, complicates things. I'll tell you why. Some of these vaccines have to be grown in human tissue culture. Now, we're not smashing fetuses or anything like that. Human tissue culture itself has been around for a very long time, and usually it's grown from cancer cells. I don't know if you guys have heard the book, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. It's a really good book. But tissue culture tends to be cancerous cells that people grow in labs, and they grow vaccines that way. The problem, though, is then you take that virus and break it down and then turn it into a vaccine and purify it to the best way you can, but you really don't quite know, or you really can't take everything out. There is always going to be a risk that it's not completely clean. That complicates things a lot. Could there be other things that might be causing autism? Perhaps. What are the chances that kids have autism versus what are the chances that kids can get disease? I don't know. I personally vaccinate, I'm a huge proponent for vaccination. But, to actually come out and say completely vaccinations are completely safe, I don't think any immunologist would actually say that. So just bringing that out there. And that might be a really, really good, discussion to talk about, in a minute. So, yeah. Okay. So next week's talk, like I said, another, free advertisement for Stephen here is Man and Microbe, and he's going to talk about the codependent relationship with these pathogens or non-pathogenic microbes that I just talked about. And then I just wanted to leave this up for some points of discussion. And food for thought to kind of bring out the discussion today, because I think I gave you a lot of stuff to think about, and this is a great way to process it. So first, let's imagine there's a flu outbreak. Let's think about swine flu, for instance, but what if it was even more deadlier than that? What if it was like the Spanish flu, right? Would we be prepared? What about quarantines? And what would you do? It's far, far more contagious, okay, than Ebola. Far more contagious. What would you do? Quarantine is not even like an option. We didn't quarantine people when they had swine flu. I just want you to keep that in mind, okay? If you had any questions or comments, obviously you can think about that. And then another question, if we had a prion outbreak in the U.S., what would you do? Like, for instance, if we had a prion outbreak with cattle, again, would you change your diet? Because vegans won't get prions. Well, they might get Creutzfeldt, Jacob's disease, Creutzfeldt. Please, I'm sorry, Vadi, if I did not pronounce that correctly. I try. But, you know, that can't be prevented. But for the most part, you can. And yes, you're right, Truth. How would we know if there's a 10-year incubation? You wouldn't. Until it's too late in some ways, but no. And then what about the vaccine controversy, right? We can talk about that too, because to me, I still digest it, and I don't really have any good conclusions for it. Lastly, and I keep forgetting, I forgot to do this last time, but please, if you really like these talks, keep in mind, there's a little tip jar, which looks like an apple next to me. None of these lindens go to me. They all go to moms. And I will tell you the reason for my madness, because I think Star doesn't even quite understand it herself. I just really like talking here, and I really like everybody that's here. So, and I really enjoy sharing information with people. So that's obvious. That's honestly why I really like doing it. And plus, if I can get a pilot study out of it, then that means that helps me with my studies too. So please, if you like these talks, Star uses this money to pay for the venue. She's always trying to improve the experience, always trying to improve the experience here. So this kind of encourages her, obviously, because I don't want it to die, and I do want people to keep going. Incidentally, if you are interested in talking at moms, please do talk to Star. And if you're intimidated by it, for instance, you have something to say, but you're not sure how to make slides or how to present it, please talk to me too, and I can help you out with some of that, because I'm a huge advocate for human voice, and I firmly believe that people have really good stuff to say, and we should listen. And so this is kind of a chance to be able to do that in a really nice way. We are booked out, by the way, for the next 3 weeks with talks on Tuesdays at 6:30. So Stephen will be talking next week, and Natalia, who is also here, will be talking the following week. And then after that, I'm actually going to be doing a talk on the history of cancer. So with that, Star, did I forget anything, or did I get everything that I needed to? All right. Everybody, I'm going to shut my mic off, and everybody else is more than welcome to talk at this point, please.